He took the alien girl's gift without knowing it meant he accepted her marriage proposal. Jason Thorne wasn't looking for trouble when he stepped into the Stellar Bazaar that morning. The sprawling marketplace on New Terra's capital city was just another stop on his cargo run, and a chance to stretch his legs and maybe grab some authentic alien cuisine before heading back to his ship. His leather jacket creaked as he walked, drawing a few curious glances from the various species milling about the marketplace. The sense of exotic spices and sounds of a dozen different languages filled the air as he made his way through the crowded thoroughfare. Holographic signs flickered overhead, advertising everything from Centaurian silk to Proximan crystals. It was the same old routine he'd followed 100 times before on 100 different worlds. Then he saw her. Standing behind a crystalline counter was quite possibly the most striking woman, alien or human, he'd ever laid eyes on. Her skin was a delicate shade of mint green that seemed to shimmer in the artificial lighting, complementing her flowing turquoise hair that cascaded past her shoulders in gentle waves. The silver bodysuit she wore left little to the imagination, hugging curves that were decidedly, appealingly humanoid. "See something you like, Earthman?" she called out, her voice carrying a musical lilt that made his spine tingle. Her silver choker caught the light as she tilted her head, regarding him with large, iridescent eyes. "Just browsing," Jason replied, trying to maintain his composure as he approached her stall. The counter was filled with an assortment of strange artifacts and trinkets that seemed to glow with an inner light. "Though I have to admit, your wares are intriguing." A knowing smile played across her lips. "I'm Hydra," she said, extending a slender hand, "and everything here is authentic Etherian craftwork, passed down through generations of my people." Jason took her hand, noting how warm it felt against his skin. Jason Thorne, independent cargo hauler and occasional treasure hunter. He gestured at the items before him. "Mind telling me what some of these do? Why don't you come back tomorrow?" Hydra suggested, her eyes twinkling. "I close soon, but I'd be happy to give you a private showing of my collection." Something in her tone made his pulse quicken. "I'd like that," he found himself saying before his brain could catch up with his mouth. As he turned to leave, she called after him. "Oh, and Jason, wear something nice. We Etherians appreciate a man who makes an effort." He spent the rest of the day thinking about those eyes and that smile, never suspecting that his life was about to become exponentially more complicated. When Jason returned to the Stellar Bazaar the next evening, wearing his best civilian attire, the scene before him made his blood boil. 3 hulking Kraxans, reptilian traders notorious for their aggressive business practices, were looming over Hydra's stall. Their scaled hides gleamed dully under the market's artificial twilight, and their postures radiated menace. "Your kind isn't welcome here," the largest Kraxan growled, his forked tongue flicking between razor-sharp teeth. "This sector belongs to the Trade Confederation." Hydra stood her ground, chin raised defiantly. "I have all the proper permits and authorizations. The bazaar is neutral territory, as established by the Galactic Commerce Treaty." "Treaties change," another Kraxan sneered, his clawed hand sweeping across her counter, sending several delicate artifacts clattering to the floor. "Just like ownership of prime retail space." Jason didn't hesitate. His boots crunched on the metallic flooring as he strode forward, drawing their attention. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the calm confidence that had served him well in countless spaceport bars, "I believe the lady asked you to leave?" The Kraxans turned, sizing him up. The leader's vertical pupils narrowed. "This doesn't concern you, human." "See, that's where you're wrong." Jason moved to stand beside Hydra's counter, deliberately placing himself between her and the aggressors. "I have business with this establishment, and you're interfering with it." "Jason," Hydra whispered, her hand brushing his arm. The touch sent an electric thrill through him, despite the tense situation. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He didn't take his eyes off the Kraxans. "Because where I come from, we have a saying, humanity doesn't back down from bullies." The largest Kraxan barked out a harsh laugh. "Your species' reputation for bravado is well known. Human. As is your fragility." He flexed his clawed hands meaningfully. "Funny thing about humans," Jason replied, a dangerous smile playing across his face. "We're full of surprises." The Kraxan lunged, faster than something that size should move. But Jason was ready. Years of zero-G combat training kicked in as he sidestepped, using the alien's momentum against him. His elbow connected with the sweet spot just behind the Kraxen's jaw, one of the few vulnerable points in their otherwise armored bodies. The impact sent the alien staggering, crashing into his companions. Jason pressed his advantage, not giving them time to regroup. A swift kick to another's knee joint, another weak point he'd learned about during his merchant marine days, followed by a precise strike to the third's throat sac. In less than 30 seconds, all three Kraxens were on the ground, wheezing and clutching various injured parts of their anatomy. Like I said, Jason straightened his jacket, full of surprises. Now I suggest you leave before I demonstrate some more human traits like persistence and creativity. The Kraxens scrambled to their feet, dignity forgotten in their haste to retreat. Their leader paused only long enough to spit out, "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." Hydra's voice rang out, carrying a new tone of authority. She held up what looked like a crystalline recording device. "I've documented this entire encounter, including your threats and property damage. I'm sure the Trade Confederation would be very interested in seeing how their representatives conduct business." The Kraxen's scales paled visibly before they disappeared into the crowd. Jason turned to Hydra, concern replacing adrenaline. "Are you all right?" She was staring at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. That was impressive. Most species would have called security or tried to negotiate. "Well, we humans tend to be more hands-on," he said, helping her gather the scattered artifacts. "And though I have to admit, that recording device was a nice touch." Hydra's lips curved in a mischievous smile. "Oh, this?" She held up the crystal. It's just a paperweight, but they didn't know that." Jason couldn't help but laugh. "Clever. You're full of surprises yourself." "You have no idea," she murmured, her eyes sparkling with something that made his pulse quicken. She moved closer, her scent, like exotic flowers in starlight, filling his senses. "Let me close up early. I think you've more than earned that private showing I promised." As she began securing her stall, Jason noticed her hands trembling slightly. "They won't bother you again," he assured her. "I'm not trembling from fear, Jason," she said softly, looking up at him through long lashes. "Watching you defend me. In my culture, such displays of prowess are highly regarded." The way she said it made his mouth go dry. "Is that so?" "Indeed." She finished locking up and took his arm. "Come, I have something special I want to show you, something I've been saving for someone worthy." Hydra's private workshop was tucked away in one of the station's quieter sectors, far from the bustling marketplace. The space was a fascinating blend of laboratory and art studio, with crystalline structures growing from the walls and ceiling like luminescent coral. Artifacts similar to those from her stall lined the shelves, but these seemed more alive somehow, pulsing with an inner light that made the air itself feel charged with possibility. "This is incredible," Jason breathed, taking in the otherworldly atmosphere. His fingers tingled as he passed near a particularly active crystal formation. "I've never seen anything like it." "Few humans have," Hydra replied, moving through the space with fluid grace. Her silver bodysuit caught the crystal's light, creating mesmerizing patterns across her mint-green skin. "Our artifacts are more than mere decorative pieces. They're conduits for emotional energy, living connections between souls." She gestured, and the ambient light shifted to a warm, intimate glow. "What you're feeling, that tingling sensation, that's the crystals responding to your emotional state. They're quite excited by your presence." Jason watched, fascinated as the nearest crystal cluster shifted from blue to a deep rose color. "They can sense emotions." "They do more than sense them." Hydra's voice dropped to a sultry purr as she stepped closer. "They amplify them, refine them, give them form." Her fingers traced the air near his chest, not quite touching. "Your aura is remarkably strong for a human. So much passion, so much raw energy." The air between them seemed to crackle with invisible electricity. Jason found himself hyper-aware of every movement she made, every subtle shift in her expression. "Is that unusual?" "Extraordinary," she breathed. "Most species' emotional signatures are like whispers. Yours ... Her eyes locked with his, pupils dilating. "Yours is like a supernova." She turned abruptly, moving to a secured cabinet in the corner. The motion left Jason feeling oddly bereft, as if a physical connection had been broken. He watched as she input a complex sequence into the cabinet's lock mechanism. "I've been waiting for someone like you," Hydra continued, her voice taking on an almost reverent quality. "Someone worthy of our highest arts." The cabinet opened with a soft hiss, revealing a collection of objects that seemed to float in a field of pure light. From this ethereal display, she carefully withdrew a strange, elegant vessel that immediately caught Jason's attention. It was roughly the size of a sugar bowl, its surface a deep, mesmerizing green that seemed to shift and swirl like the northern lights back on Earth. Delicate patterns traced across its surface in what appeared to be living light. "This is an Etherian soul vessel," Hydra explained, holding it out to him with both hands. "It's very special to my people." Jason found himself reaching for it almost instinctively. The moment his fingers touched the surface, a warm sensation spread up his arms and through his chest. "It's beautiful," he murmured, turning it carefully in his hands. "What does it do?" Hydra's expression was unreadable, but her eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. "It creates bonds," she said softly, "permanent ones. Like some kind of storage device." A small smile played across her lips. "Something like that." She watched intently as he examined the vessel. "Do you accept it?" The question seemed to carry more weight than its simple words suggested, but Jason was too captivated by the object's beauty to notice. "Of course, it's amazing." The moment the words left his mouth, the vessel pulsed with brilliant light. The patterns on its surface began to shift more rapidly, and Jason could have sworn he felt his heartbeat synchronize with its rhythmic glow. Hydra's breath caught audibly. When Jason looked up, her expression was a mixture of joy, triumph, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "Perfect," she whispered. Did something happen?" "Oh yes," she replied, stepping close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her body. "Something wonderful." Her hand came up to cup his cheek, her touch sending electric shivers down his spine. "You've made me very happy, Jason Thorne." Before he could ask what she meant, she pressed herself against him, her lips finding his in a kiss that literally made the crystals around them burst into rainbow cascades of light. Jason found himself responding instinctively. The soul vessel warmed between them as his free arm wrapped around her waist. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, the workshop was bathed in a deep, pulsing crimson glow. Hydra's eyes were half-lidded, her pupils fully dilated. "Take me to your ship," she breathed against his lips. "There's so much more I need to show you." The station's corridors seemed different now, charged with an electric anticipation that Jason couldn't quite explain. The soul vessel in his hands continued to pulse warmly, synchronized with his heartbeat, while Hydra's presence beside him felt like a magnetic field drawing him closer with every step. They were halfway to the docking bay when the first reaction came. An elderly Etherian couple turned the corner, their own silvery attire marking them as members of Hydra's species. The moment their eyes fell on the soul vessel, they froze mid-stride. "By the celestial harmonies," the male Etherian breathed, his mint-green complexion paling to a lighter shade. "Young one, you've actually done it." Hydra straightened proudly, pressing closer to Jason. "Elder Thaxon, Elder Marina, may I present Jason Thorne, my chosen." The female Elder Marina stepped forward with surprising speed. "A human? You've bound yourself to a human?" Her iridescent eyes widened as she studied Jason more closely. "And such a strong aura. Extraordinary." Jason glanced between them, confusion starting to override the pleasant haze that had surrounded him since accepting the vessel. "I'm sorry, but what exactly do you mean by bound?" Before anyone could answer, more Etherians began appearing, drawn by some invisible signal. Their reactions ranged from shocked gasps to excited whispers, all focused on the glowing vessel in Jason's hands. "The first human Etherian binding in recorded history," someone murmured. "Look at how the vessel responds to him." "The High Council will never approve, but the binding is already complete." Jason turned to Hydra, whose expression had grown slightly nervous despite her maintained pride. "Hydra, what's going on? What exactly did I agree to when I accepted this?" She bit her lower lip, a gesture that somehow managed to be both adorable and concerning. "Well, in our culture, when someone accepts a soul vessel from another," she paused, searching for words, "it's essentially a marriage contract." The corridor went silent. Jason blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "A marriage contract," Elder Thaxton repeated, his tone somewhere between disapproval and fascination. And not just any binding ritual. That's a royal house vessel. Young lady, you've effectively made this human a member of the ruling bloodline. What? Jason's voice cracked slightly. Hydra squared her shoulders. I am first daughter of House Celestial. I have the right to choose my mate. First daughter? Jason felt like he'd been hit with a stunner. You're a princess? Well, technically, yes. She touched his arm gently. I wanted you to know me for myself first, not my title. And when I saw how you defended me, how naturally you connected with our artifacts. Her eyes shone with genuine emotion. I knew you were the one. Elder Marina made a sound that might have been a laugh. Oh, child, you always did have your mother's impulsive streak. She turned to Jason. You should know, young man, that Etherian bindings are rather more permanent than human marriages. The soul vessel creates a literal psychic bond between mates. As if on cue, Jason felt a wave of anxiety that wasn't his own wash over him. He looked at Hydra in shock, realizing he was feeling her emotions. It's already starting, she whispered, both thrilled and apprehensive. The vessel recognized our compatibility. That's why it activated so strongly. This is unprecedented, Elder Thaxton declared. A human with sufficient psychic resonance to activate a royal vessel. He peered at Jason intently. Perhaps this is why our seers have been so agitated lately. They spoke of a great change coming to our people. More Etherians had gathered, forming a loose circle around them. Jason could feel their mixture of curiosity, concern, and excitement bleeding through his newly awakened senses. The soul vessel pulsed brighter in response to the emotional maelstrom. I should have explained everything first, Hydra said softly, her hand finding his. Through the contact, he could feel her sincerity, or said and something deeper. No, but I was afraid you'd say no if you knew the full implications, and I couldn't bear that thought. Jason looked down at their joined hands, then at the vessel, then at the assembled crowd of Etherians. His mind was reeling, but underneath the shock, he felt something else, something warm and right and inevitable. So, he said slowly, I'm married to an alien princess who can now read my emotions, and I've apparently just joined some kind of psychic royal family. Hydra nodded, biting her lip again. Jason surprised everyone, including himself, by laughing. Well, this definitely beats my original plans for the evening. He squeezed her hand, sending a pulse of affection through their new bond that made her gasp. Though we should probably discuss the whole surprise marriage thing at some point. The tension in the corridor broke as several Etherians chuckled. Elder Marina stepped forward, placing her hands on both their shoulders. Well, it seems humans truly are full of surprises. Come, both of you. The High Council will want to meet their new son-in-law. The first warning came through their newly formed bond, a spike of danger sense that made both Jason and Hydra snap to attention. The gathered Etherians must have felt something too, as the crowd's excited murmurs turned to concerned whispers. Well, a familiar gravelly voice echoed through the corridor. Looks like we found ourselves a royal celebration. The Kraxan leader from earlier emerged from a side passage, but he wasn't alone. At least a dozen more of his species flanked him, all armed with illegal pulse weapons. Their scales gleamed with combat-grade armor enhancements. Jason, Hydra's mental voice brushed his consciousness. The vessel, it's more than just a marriage bond. It's also a weapon, but only bondmates can activate it. He glanced at the soul vessel still cradled in his hands, now pulsing with an aggressive red light. How? Feel it. Like you felt my emotions. The vessel responds to intent. The Kraxan leader stepped forward, his reptilian eyes fixed on Hydra. The Trade Confederation will be very interested to learn that the first daughter of House Celestial has been slumming it in our territory. His tongue flicked out. Imagine the diplomatic leverage. Jason shifted slightly, positioning himself between the Kraxans and his wife. The thought was still bizarre, but now wasn't the time to dwell on it. You really want to start an interstellar incident over a trade dispute? This stopped being about trade the moment we learned her identity. The Kraxan's claws flexed. Though I have to admit, killing the human who humiliated us will be a pleasant bonus. The elderly Etherians were being quietly evacuated by younger members of their species, but Jason could feel Hydra's resolve through their bond. She wasn't going anywhere. Last chance to walk away, Jason warned, focusing on the vessel as Hydra had suggested. It responded instantly, warming in his hands. The Kraxan leader laughed. "Oh, you're outnumbered, outgunned, and Jason didn't let him finish. Acting on pure instinct, he channeled his protective fury through the vessel. A wave of pure force erupted from it, slamming into the front line of Kraxans and sending them sprawling. "Holy shit," he breathed, staring at the vessel in amazement. Hydra's delighted laughter rang both in his ears and his mind. "That's my husband." Through their bond, he felt her pride and her rising battle lust. "Now let me show you what an Etherian princess can do." She raised her hands, and the crystalline structures decorating the corridor walls suddenly pulsed with energy. Shards of living crystal burst forth, forming a protective barrier around them just as the remaining Kraxans opened fire. The firefight that ensued was like nothing Jason had ever experienced. The soul vessel responded to his every thought, transforming his natural combat instincts into devastating energy attacks. Hydra moved in perfect synchronization with him, their bond allowing them to coordinate without words. When he needed cover, crystalline shields materialized. When she needed an opening, he provided it with precisely timed force blasts. They moved like they'd been fighting together for years instead of minutes. "The vessel," Hydra communicated mentally as they pressed their advantage. "It's amplifying our natural compatibility. This is why cross-species bonds are so rare. Few combinations can achieve this level of harmony." A Kraxan tried to flank them, but Jason felt Hydra's warning through their connection before the alien had even completed his movement. The soul vessel pulsed, and the attacker went flying. "Less science lesson," Jason projected back, surprising himself with how naturally the mental communication came. "More fighting?" He felt her amusement bubble through their bond, followed by a wave of desire. The combination of battle adrenaline and their growing connection was having an interesting effect on both of them. "Focus!" Elder Thaxton's voice cut through their moment. He had stayed behind with Elder Marina, both of them contributing to the fight with surprisingly powerful crystal manipulations of their own. The remaining Kraxans were regrouping, their leader snarling in frustration. "Kill them all! The Confederation will cover any diplomatic—" He never finished the sentence. The soul vessel suddenly blazed with blinding light, responding to Jason and Hydra's combined will. A surge of pure psychic energy swept the corridor, dropping their attackers unconscious where they stood. In the sudden silence, Jason turned to Hydra, both of them breathing heavily. Her silver bodysuit was slightly scorched from a near miss, her turquoise hair wild from the fight. She had never looked more beautiful. Through their bond, he felt her having exactly the same thought about him. "Well," Elder Marina said dryly, surveying the unconscious Kraxans, "I believe that answers any questions about the validity of your bond." She smiled slightly. "Though perhaps we should get you to the High Council before any more assassins arrive. Or before these two give in to all that combat-enhanced passion they're broadcasting," Elder Thaxton muttered, making both Jason and Hydra blush as they realized just how visible their emotions were to other Etherians. "I don't suppose we could postpone the council meeting?" Hydra asked hopefully, her hand finding Jason's. "No," both elders said firmly. Jason sighed but couldn't help grinning. "I'm starting to think getting accidentally married to you might be the most interesting mistake I've ever made." "Mistake?" Hydra raised an eyebrow, sending a teasing pulse through their bond that made his knees weak. "Poor word choice," he admitted, squeezing her hand. "Let's go meet your family and hope they don't have me executed for corrupting their princess." The High Council chamber was a marvel of crystalline architecture, its towering spires seeming to defy gravity as they spiraled toward the station's transparent dome. The assembled council members, 12 of the most powerful Etherians in known space, sat in a semicircle of floating chairs, their silver robes reflecting the starlight streaming in from above. Jason felt Hydra sway slightly beside him. Through their bond, he caught a wave of dizziness that didn't seem entirely due to nervousness. "Are you all right?" he whispered, steadying her with a gentle hand. Before she could answer, a majestic figure rose from the central throne. Queen Astria, Hydra's mother, was everything you'd expect from an alien monarch. And then some. Her mint-green skin had an almost luminescent quality, and her elaborate silver gown seemed to be made of living light. "So," the queen's voice filled the chamber, "this is the human who has captured my daughter's heart and accepted her bond vessel." Jason bowed, trying to remember the protocol Hydra had hastily taught him on their way to the chamber. "Your Majesty, Save your explanations," she interrupted, but her tone held more amusement than anger. "The vessel's activation tells us everything we need to know about your compatibility." Her iridescent eyes narrowed slightly. "Though I must admit, the timing is rather fortuitous." A male council member leaned forward. "Indeed, the prophecies speak of a union between our peoples, one that would herald a new age of cooperation and warn us of a coming darkness." "Prophecies?" Jason glanced at Hydra, who looked equally surprised. "The seers have been unusually active lately," another council member explained. "They speak of a great threat, one that can only be countered by the combined strengths of humanity and Etheria." Suddenly, Hydra stumbled again, this time more noticeably. Through their bond, Jason felt a strange flutter of energy that definitely wasn't normal. The soul vessel in his hands pulsed in response, its light taking on a new pearl-like quality. Queen Astria's eyes widened. "Daughter, are you?" A medical officer stepped forward, holding up a scanning device that emitted a soft chime. "It's confirmed, Your Majesty. The princess is with child. A hybrid conception, the first of its kind." The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Jason felt the room spin slightly as the implications hit him. "But we only just... we haven't even had time to..." Hydra blushed deeply, her mint-green skin darkening. "Etherian biology is different. When we find our true mate, conception can happen very quickly after intimate contact." Through their bond, she sent him a flash of memory from their passionate encounter after leaving her workshop, making him blush as well. "This changes everything," one of the council members declared. "A human Etherian child, and royal blood no less." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing multiple hostile ships dropping out of hyperspace. "Cracks in warships," a security officer reported, "but they're not alone. We're detecting Drachnid and Varaxian signatures as well." "The Confederation," Elder Thaxon growled. "They're making their move." Queen Astria rose to her full height. "They must have spies in the station. They know about the bond, about the child." Her expression hardened. "They're trying to prevent the prophecy from coming to pass." Jason felt Hydra's fear through their bond, not for herself, but for their unborn child. The soul vessel responded to their shared protective instinct, its glow intensifying. "The vessel," Elder Marina said suddenly, "look at how it's reacting to their combined emotion. The prophecy speaks of a power born of union." "We need to get you both to safety," the Queen declared. "The royal fleet is already responding, but..." "No," Jason said firmly, surprising himself and everyone else. "Running won't solve this. If there's really some prophecy about human and Etherian unity, then maybe it's time we proved it's possible." He turned to Hydra, sending waves of love and determination through their bond. "I may not have known what I was getting into when I accepted your gift, but I'm damn well going to live up to it now." Hydra's eyes shimmered with emotion. "We fight together?" "Always," he promised, feeling the truth of it in his soul. The vessel pulsed between them, responding to their resolve. Queen Astria studied them for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. Let us show these conspirators what happens when they threaten our family." She turned to the council. "Signal the fleet and contact Earth's embassy. It's time humanity knew the truth about their role in what's to come." The station's central control spire thrummed with ancient power as Jason and Hydra raced through its crystalline corridors, the soul vessel pulsing in sync with their rapid heartbeats. Behind them, Queen Astria and a contingent of royal guards maintained a defensive perimeter against infiltrating Confederation forces. "The ancestral core is just ahead," Hydra communicated through their bond, one hand protectively over her abdomen as they ran. "If the prophecies are true, our combined essence should be able to activate it." Through the massive viewport windows, they could see the space battle unfolding. The Etherian royal fleet's crystalline ships were beautiful but outnumbered, their elegant forms weaving through enemy fire as they defended the station. A familiar voice crackled over the station's comm system. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We have received Queen Astria's transmission and are responding to her call for aid. All human vessels in the sector are moving to support our Etherian allies." Jason felt a surge of pride as sleek human warships began emerging from hyperspace, their advanced weaponry immediately engaging the Confederation forces. Through their bond, he sensed Hydra's amazement at humanity's swift response. "Your people didn't even hesitate," she marveled. "We humans have a saying," Jason grinned as they reached the core chamber's entrance. "You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us." The chamber itself was breathtaking, a vast spherical space filled with floating, crystalline platforms, all orbiting a central column of pure energy. Ancient Etherean script covered the walls, glowing with latent power. "The heart of our ancestors' technology," Hydra explained, leading him toward the central platform. "But it's been dormant for millennia. No single Etherean has had the power to activate it." "Good thing I'm not Etherean then," Jason quipped, earning a pulse of affectionate exasperation through their bond. They reached the central platform just as the station shook from a heavy impact. Through their connection, Jason felt Hydra's flash of concern for their unborn child, and his protective instincts surged. The soul vessel blazed in response, its light synchronizing with the chamber's ambient glow. "Now what?" he asked, holding the vessel between them. Hydra placed her hands over his on the vessel's surface. "We join our essences, like we did during the fight. But this time, we push deeper, past the surface bond." Their eyes met, and Jason felt himself falling into her iridescent gaze. The soul vessel's warmth spread up their arms as their consciousness began to merge more fully than ever before. Suddenly, they weren't just sharing emotions, they were sharing memories, experiences, entire lifetimes of perspective blending together. Jason saw Hydra's childhood in the crystal spires, felt her loneliness as a royal heir, understood why she'd chosen to work incognito in the marketplace. In turn, Hydra experienced his adventures among the stars, his determination to prove himself, the instant attraction he'd felt upon seeing her. The chamber's crystals began to sing, resonating with their combined consciousness. The central energy column pulsed brighter, responding to their union. Through their merged awareness, they both felt it. The station's ancient systems awakening, recognizing them as something new, something unprecedented. Human determination and adaptability melded with Etherean psychic potential, creating a synergy that the prophecies had only hinted at. The soul vessel lifted from their hands, floating between them as its light intensified to near-blinding levels. Energy cascaded from it into the station systems, activating defense protocols that hadn't been used since the station's construction. Outside, the battle took a dramatic turn. Massive crystalline weapons platforms emerged from hidden compartments in the station's surface, their design a perfect fusion of human tactical efficiency and Etherean energy manipulation. Admiral Chen's voice came through again, now tinged with awe. "By all that's holy, the station's power readings are off the charts. Whatever you two are doing in there, keep it up." Through their shared consciousness, Jason and Hydra coordinated the defense systems with unprecedented precision. Human battle strategies flowed seamlessly into Etherean energy control, creating attack patterns that the enemy couldn't predict or counter. "The Confederation fleet is retreating," a royal guard announced from the chamber entrance. "The combined human Etherean forces are driving them back." Queen Astria's voice carried a note of triumph. "The prophecy spoke truth. Together, our peoples are stronger than any force that would stand against us." Jason felt Hydra's joy through their bond, mixed with something else. A tiny flutter of new consciousness, their child responding to their combined power. The soul vessel's light took on that same pearlescent quality they'd seen in the council chamber. As the battle concluded and their merged consciousness gently separated back into individual awareness, Jason pulled Hydra into his arms. "So," he said with a grin, "still glad you tricked me into marrying you?" Hydra laughed, the sound like crystal chimes. "Considering you just helped activate an ancient defense system, proved an age-old prophecy correct, and helped forge an alliance between our peoples." She pressed closer, sending a wave of desire through their bond that made him catch his breath. "I'd say it worked out rather well." "And the baby?" he asked softly, his hand joining hers over her abdomen. "The first of a new generation," she whispered, "a bridge between our peoples, just like us." 3 months after the Battle of Unity Station, as it had come to be known, the grand ceremonial hall was transformed into a dazzling fusion of human and Etherean celebrations. Crystalline decorations pulsed with rainbow light, while traditional earth flowers floated in anti-gravity arrangements. The air hummed with excitement as representatives from both species mingled, sharing stories and customs. Jason stood before a mirror, adjusting his unique ceremonial attire, a blend of Terran formal wear and Aetherian royal regalia. The soul vessel, now permanently bonded to both him and Hydra, rested in a specially designed holder at his waist, its gentle pulsing matching his heartbeat. "Nervous?" Admiral Chen asked, approaching with a grin. The human fleet commander had become a close friend since the battle, helping navigate the diplomatic waters of the new alliance. "About the ceremony?" "No," Jason smiled, feeling Hydra's presence through their bond. "About becoming a father to the first human Aetherian child in history? Absolutely terrified," the Admiral laughed. "Well, the medical teams from both worlds are amazed by how well the pregnancy is progressing. Though I hear the cravings are... interesting," Jason groaned. "Yesterday she wanted earth pickles dipped in Aetherian crystal honey. The day before that, it was hamburgers sprinkled with powdered starlight. At least the diplomatic corps is having fun, establishing trade routes for all these new pregnancy cravings." Through their bond, Jason felt Hydra's amused response to their conversation. She was in another chamber, preparing for the ceremony with her mother and the royal attendants. Her pregnancy had begun showing earlier than a human one would, her abdomen now sporting a slight bump that glowed with a subtle pearlescent light. The medical scans had revealed something extraordinary. Their child was developing with both human and Aetherian traits, but in perfect harmony. The combination of their DNA had created something entirely new, yet somehow exactly as it should be. "It's time," Elder Marina announced, entering the chamber. She paused and smiling at Jason. "You know, when Hydra first told us she planned to work in the marketplace to find her destined mate, we thought she was being impulsive. Now look, she's united our peoples, activated ancient defenses, and is carrying the future in her womb. All because she gave me a fancy sugar bowl," Jason quipped, earning chuckles from everyone present. The ceremony itself was spectacular. As Jason and Hydra stood before both their peoples, their bond radiating joy through the soul vessel, representatives from Earth and Aetheria signed historic alliance treaties. Their union, once considered unprecedented, was now being celebrated as the beginning of a new era. Queen Astria's voice carried through the hall. "From this day forward, our peoples walk together. What began with a simple gift in a marketplace has blossomed into the fulfillment of ancient prophecies and the promise of a shared future." Through their bond, Jason felt Hydra's happiness mixed with a sudden surge of emotion from their unborn child. The soul vessel flared brilliantly, and the chamber's crystals responded, creating a spectacular light show that drew gasps of wonder from the assembled guests. "Show off!" Jason sent through their bond, feeling Hydra's mental laughter in response. "She gets that from you," Hydra replied, her hand finding his as they faced their gathered peoples. "She?" Jason raised an eyebrow. "You can tell?" "Mother's intuition," Hydra smiled, her free hand resting on her glowing abdomen. "Plus, the royal seers are quite certain. They say she'll have your determination and my gift for getting into trouble. So, we're doomed. Gloriously so." The celebration continued long into the night, with humans and Aetherians sharing customs, dances, and stories. Jason lost count of how many toasts were made to their child, the living symbol of unity between their species. Later, as they stood on a private balcony overlooking the station's crystal gardens, Hydra leaned into Jason's embrace. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. "About accepting my gift without knowing what it meant?" Jason pretended to think about it. "Well, I did end up accidentally married to an alien princess, involved in an interstellar battle, and responsible for changing the course of 2 civilizations." He pulled her closer, feeling their child's consciousness brush against their bond. "Best mistake I ever made." "It wasn't a mistake," Hydra corrected, her eyes twinkling. "It was destiny. The prophecies said our peoples needed to unite." "The prophecies didn't say anything about sneaky marketplace proposals," he teased. "No," she agreed, pulling him down for a kiss that made the soul vessel pulse brightly. "That part was all me." Above them, Earth and Aetherian ships patrolled together, their combined fleets a testament to their new alliance. Below, in the station's gardens, crystal flowers bloomed alongside Earth roses, creating new hybrid species that glowed with their own inner light. Just like their child would, Jason thought, feeling the future pulse with possibility through their bond.